Well, hi there. This is an emu, the second tallest dinosaur alive today. And while all birds are dinosaurs, this is one that very much feels like you're in Jurassic Park. Really, there aren't many things alive today that you might confuse with an emu. Their closest relatives are cassowaries, but the giant head casques make cassowaries very easy to distinguish from emus. I think the only two birds that you might confuse with an emu are African ostriches and South American rheas. These are both huge, flightless members of the Paleognathi, the group of birds most distantly related to all of the other birds alive today, and made up primarily, though not entirely, of large, flightless birds like these. But it's pretty easy to distinguish an emu once you know what to look for. Mostly their orange eyes and partially feathered necks. Once you know to look for these two features, you aren't going to confuse emus with anything else. And I'm super excited that earlier this year, we got to take a trip down to Florida to visit Sydney and Darwin at Crutchfield Farm. Thank you, Patreon. And we went down there to get up close and personal with these amazing birds, as well as to learn from Stacey Crutchfield about what it is like keeping emus. Because today, we have to answer a very important question. Is the emu a good pet? And is this goofball theropod the best pet dinosaur for you? Which means that we will have to give the emu a score based on our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. And we might need to get into the details of that war that humans fought and lost with the emus, because that's kind of crazy. But right now, we need to talk about handleability. Handleability is a hard category to score here. For one thing, this is a bird that is as tall as you are and generally weighs between like 31.5 and 37 kilos, which is like 69 to 82 pounds. They can get bigger than this. And while it doesn't have a claw as large as that of the cassowary, the claws that it has are big and quite sharp, and it has powerful legs and will kick if provoked. It would be totally possible for an emu to kill somebody. That said, there is no record of an emu intentionally killing anybody, not even in that war they won. Though I should say that you should do your best not to hit one with your car. What I'm saying is that it is very, very unlikely that an emu will kill you, even if you fall down. So that's good. But it is hypothetically possible. It's a big animal, and it can certainly do some damage. Plus, it is too big and unwieldy, not to mention fast, to pick up and handle very easily. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a lot of meaningful interactions with your bird, if they want to. Which is more likely to be the case if you get a male. Because with emus, and most of the Paleognathi, it is the male that cares for both eggs and offspring. For this reason, in many ways, male emus act more like typical females, and female emus like typical males. For example, females are the ones that strut and court males. Female plumage and skin change color during the breeding season. And it is the females that do most of the calling, with this low-frequency drumming that sounds kind of like the drum beats from Jumanji. Haunting, wonderful, and almost inconceivably and imperceptibly produced by the bird itself. Females are the ones that are more likely to fight over access to mates. Males, on the other hand, build nests, sit on eggs, often abstain from feeding and drinking for extended periods to do so, and then they're the ones that care for the chicks, which I think should be called emelets. And for the rest of this video, they shall be. Emelets are obviously more handleable than our adult emus. And emus that are raised by humans and interact with them regularly and in a positive way from early emelethood are the most likely to desire regular interaction as adults. Which is important because if they don't interact with you on their terms, it's not going to be a good experience for anyone involved. So it's really important to interact with them while they are small and truly handleable, or else they will be dangerous and flighty, though flightless as adults. Not to mention that they inspect a lot of the world with their beak, which can be a little bit alarming for some people. So overall, I'm going to go with a 2 for handleability. You can interact with them, but handling, like picking them up, that's just going to become nearly impossible as they get large. And everything is going to need to be on their terms. Let's talk for just a second about feeding you. You caught me just in the middle of my dinner, but this is a really good dinner. This comes to us from Factor, and Factor is a fantastic service that delivers fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals right to your doorstep. And when I say fresh, like I really mean fresh. Each meal is chef prepared and packed with nutritious ingredients. We're all busy, right? Especially during the holidays, but Factor makes clean eating so easy. Just think, no more meal prepping, no more stress about what's for dinner, more time for your loved ones. They've got over 35 mouth-watering options every week. I'm talking variety, whether you're into keto, plant-based, or you just love good food. There's something for everyone. With the Gourmet Plus options, you can indulge when you're craving something special. It'll come with premium sides to complement your protein. Definitely keep an eye out for the surf and turf options coming soon. And because it's the holiday season, Factor's got a gift for you. How does 50% off your first box sound? You heard that right, 50% off. Tasty, nutritious meals without the hassle. Sign me up. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code ClintsReptiles50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Thank you, Factor, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. When it comes to care, we give the emu a score of 2 out of 5, which is actually not that bad for a bird. Birds are tough. And for a bird, this is really not a terribly difficult bird to keep, except for one thing. Land.
You ain't no kind of man if you ain't got land.
Emus need space. This is a big bird that likes to run around, sometimes like a crazy person. And though they are flightless, they can jump very high. I've read in many places that emus are the only birds with a calf muscle, which I don't know where they're getting this, but they do have one of the strongest and most advanced calf muscles of any bird. And so they're good runners and they're good leapers. And if they escape, it's going to be very difficult to get them to come back against their wills. So you need a very large yard surrounded by very high and very strong fences that aren't easy to climb, because they also climb. And it has to be legal to keep them where you are. These are commonly farmed, which means that they are legal as livestock in many places. If you can have a cow where you live, there is a good chance that you can have an emu, but most HOAs in many cities might not let you have a cow or an emu. So this is an absolute deal breaker for probably most people. Most people just ain't no kind of man. And if they are, they still probably don't have enough land in the right places with the right fences to be the kind of man who can have an emu. But let's say that this isn't a problem for you. Well, the next issue might be weather. Even if you have land, you probably don't have that much space in your house. But the good news is that emus are large-bodied, well-insulated homeotherms. It is possible to keep emus outside in the winter even if temperatures get below freezing, especially if they have some shelter to help protect them from the wind and to keep them dry. That's not to say that they can handle extended periods of freezing temperatures or really extreme cold, but they are pretty tolerant of a wide range of temperatures. So you can't keep them outside just anywhere, but there are a lot of places where you can, especially if you can provide heat and shelter. Use like compacted dirt floors. Hard, slippery floors are gonna lead to all sorts of problems. Make sure they have constant access to clean, unfrozen water. And watch out for shiny objects and anything that will get their attention that they can destroy or, even worse, eat. What you want them to eat is mostly prepared emu diet. You can supplement that with fruit, seeds, and other plant matter, but prepared diets should make up the bulk of the diet. If you're raising emelets, you may need to keep them indoors for some time. Be wary of potential predators that might get to them, especially once you have to move them outdoors. And talk with your breeder about their specific needs. Do remember that these people, these breeders, may call emelets chicks, so don't be shocked if that happens. Overall, emus are pretty hardy animals. They get a 4 out of 5 for hardiness. They come from some of the most inhospitable parts of Australia. They need to be tough. And though they are birds, they are larger and are unlikely to be kept indoors, so you don't need to be quite as careful about their air quality as with some smaller dinosaurs. They do like to eat things that they shouldn't eat. That is one of the major risks for adults. Emelets are more fragile for sure, but should be solid after about 3 months. Diseases like Eastern equine encephalitis, West Nile disease, and parasites that they can get, especially from raccoons, are the biggest threats to adults. Some of these can be avoided by simply vaccinating your birds, but not all of them. And also issues like broken legs and broken necks. Those can obviously be devastating, but they're not that common. Just watch out for dangers that might lead to such injuries in their particular habitat. They can live over 3 decades. So if you can avoid these dangers and get past the first 3 months or so, you should have emus at your house for longer than your kids. I said should. I don't know your kids. When it comes to availability, we give the emu a score of 3 out of 5. I've never seen emus for sale at a pet shop or like a reptile expo. I'm sure there are specialty expos that have them from time to time. But the reality is that if you want an emu, you probably won't have too much trouble finding one. You can even have eggs shipped to you. You might need to wait for the right time of year, but if you want one in the next 12 months, you can get one. You can buy them at pretty much any age. Obviously, if you get eggs, you better know how to incubate them and know how to get them feeding. They may not feed right away, and generally they learn from other birds, so keep that in mind. Emelets can be a very good option, as you can socialize them yourself. The older they are, the more that you need to rely on someone else to have socialized it well before, at least if you want to be able to interact with your emus. But they're going to be more likely to survive long term if they're older. And the older they are, the more expensive they are in many cases. So there are a lot of trade-offs to consider. When it comes to upfront costs, we give the emu a score of 1 out of 5. Mostly because of how much space and fencing they need. Shelter to build. I mean, if you don't have this already, it's going to be very expensive in most places. The emus themselves aren't all that expensive at all, at least depending on the age. For emelets, you can have one for less than a ball python, even less for eggs. They do eat a lot of food, so that will be a common recurring cost. But things like bowls and food up front won't cost much. You're gonna need some vaccinations and vet visits. But mostly they need a big yard with a big fence and a 3-walled shelter, and those things are just not cheap. But before we conclude, we need to talk for just a minute about that war. A lot has been made of this war, and the humans lost. But I would say that the war was really much harder on the emus. It was just harder to kill emus than the people involved in the war ever imagined. You see, in 1932, huge numbers of emus were devastating crops in Western Australia. Now, I should mention that the farmers in Western Australia were mostly former World War I soldiers. And if there was one thing that they knew, it was that machine guns are very effective problem solvers. So they went to Australia's Minister of Defence to request a fully automatic solution to their dinosaur-related devastation. The minister, Sir George Pearce, thought that this was a splendid suggestion. So soldiers were deployed with machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition to deal with the unruly ratites. After many days of chasing emus, attempting to ambush them or chase them down, they had killed between 50 and 500 emus, of about 20,000 causing the problem. Though the official report did make sure to mention that the soldiers had sustained no casualties. After the war, the major put in charge of the failed foray into firing on feathered field robbers said that soldiers with the capabilities of these emus could face any army in the world, and that they had the invulnerability of tanks. So they make spectacular soldiers, even if they've never directly killed anybody. But are they good pets? Well, overall, we give the emu a score of 2.4 out of 5. There are a lot of reasons not to get an emu. But if you have the space and the resources to provide for them, then they're not wholly unreasonable. There is a reason that they're farmed in large numbers. If what you want is a bird, a friendly, delightful dinosaur of a bird that isn't unreasonable to keep, get a chicken. But if it needs to be one of the largest birds in the world, like top 3, and of the top 3, the least likely to kill you, or be killed by a machine gun, then the emu might be the best pet dinosaur for you. As always, like and subscribe, and check out Tom and Stacey Crutchfield on social media, and we hope to see you real soon. I want to pause, take just a moment to say thank you to our patrons on Patreon, but more importantly to tell you that there is a whole extra video for our patrons on Patreon about what I would eat and what I would use as a feeder and under what circumstances. And that video is available only to our patrons on Patreon. So if you'd like to see that or a host of other videos and awesome cool content we have for them, it might be a good time to check out Patreon.